The Marinade.
There's no O in Marinade. Let's try it one more time. Ready? 1, 2, 3.
The Marinade.
Marinade.
Bone marinade. The
That's
Marinade.
The Marinade. With Jason Earle.
Oh boy. 1, 2, 1, 2.
Welcome to The Marinade with Jason Earle, a free-flowing conversation about the creative process with creative people. This is episode 105, and our guest is Joe Garner, better known as the Kernal. This is the second time we've had the pleasure of sitting down with the Kernal. Last time had to be on Zoom, as most folks were not yet back to touring due to the COVID-19 pandemic. This go-round, we got to sit side by side in my Mazda SUV the day after the Kern and the boys crushed their set at the wonderful Tuffy's Music Box in Sanford, Florida. The Kernal's latest record, Listen to the Blood, is the culmination of an idea Kern has been working on for several years, and it's absolutely outstanding. More about that in this conversation. Y'all, this was such a pleasure. I am grateful to bring you my conversation with the Kernal.
Yeah. Hello.
Perfect.
Good.
You kind of got to be aware of there's like a little pop if you're not careful with the cord. I have not figured out how to fix that, but
Just kind of keep it.
steady.
Okay.
Keep it between the lines.
Yep.
Dude, we made it. This whole thing's been an adventure.
Yeah.
You got here, we got here, we made it happen. It's like a wrong turn to Tupelo, I suppose, that landed us here. But man, thanks for doing this again. It's been a year a little over a year since we last talked.
Wow, that's crazy to think about. Yeah.
Isn't that wild? Because I was thinking about how You Do You had been out, the single had been out for a few months, maybe a month or two when we talked last. But that was a long time ago.
Yeah, it's funny how time does. It's kind of, not. It's like, everything looking back over the last couple years, it's just all scrambled.
Well, and I'm curious about how that, because last night was the first time I got to see you play. I had so much fun, dude. And I didn't get to stay the whole night, but I think I got through 6 songs before
Okay.
I had to leave. So, and I think all 6, if I'm not mistaken, were from Listen to the Blood.
Probably so.
I think you led off with all maybe in a row. I'm pretty sure you played them right in a row, because there's the track list. Did you play Long Cool Finger?
Yeah.
I think
Yeah,
that's
I can't remember. Yeah, it was a bit of a blur getting there. We had such a crazy day with the van that just getting there was enough, So I was
Right.
like, all right, let's just get through the show. And
Well, it was fun. We appreciate you going through the effort to get here to beautiful Sanford, Florida, and it was interesting to me to think about how long some of these songs have been around. I mean, there's videos you playing some of these for several years ago, and then the record finally getting to come out. And I wonder, now that you're out getting to play them for people, what it feels like to play these songs, specifically what it feels like to sort of how they've evolved, because the song changes, right? And you change, and I'm just interested because we've all gone through so much. This is an interesting thought with this record that is so nuanced and beautiful and so heavy in places that you've had all this time between when some of these songs were written and it being released, and if they're evolving now that you're out playing them.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of the the fun thing about doing, playing music that's meant to be, or recording music that's meant to be performed live, is that really, depending, you have a different band for different tours, and you have a static, product, or not a product, but a static, set of things that you're trying to get across when you play a show. But every time you do a show, it's different every time, and that's that space in between those two things of having something that you're trying to, in some ways, like duplicate and make it. We obviously want people to know the song and it, for it to be recognizable. But yeah, I mean, every every set does feel a little bit different. So yeah, I mean that definitely plays into these songs. Like you said, we have had a couple of these tunes that we've had around, like Pistol on the Pillow. When you start thinking back, it's like, yeah, this thing's been around, whatever, 4 years, 5 years. And by the time you get around to recording them, and then the whole pandemic thing, kind of that gap, of basically, a year nearly of having it sit there before we actually got to put it to bed, and there's just so many things involved. But yeah, it's almost like rediscovering the songs on, with this tour. It's like, because typically I haven't played electric guitar either, but I just started doing that recently, so I'm trying to challenge myself a little bit more to have a little more responsibility for the music. But some of these songs are so wordy, and it's like, it takes a while to get warmed up, on a tour like this. But that's part of the challenge of it and part of the fun, too.
Yeah.
But yeah, and we're still kind of in the beginning stages of touring on this stuff too. So
that brings up something interesting, because I think it's fun thinking about last night. I'm glad it worked out this way. It's weird that it worked out. So now we're in my car in a parking lot in Sanford doing an interview, and it's not how it typically happens, but it had to happen. It was necessitated by you guys broke down, and then you broke down again, and then you rolled in right about the time you were supposed to hit the stage, just about.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting to think about, what you just said, because like by at least the second or third song, it felt like you were in a groove. If it from my perspective, in the audience, it felt like you were in a groove. And I wonder about that headspace. Like, I know you've been doing this for a while, but at the same time, that was a day of adversity. And then you got there and you are singing these wordy songs that are nuanced. There's a lot of shit in these songs. And so I wonder about that headspace as you roll in, especially having gone through a day like you went through yesterday. And it wasn't life or death, but it was, it's your work. And there were obstacles along the way, and how you feel as you approach a day like that.
Yeah, it's funny. I mean, I have to remind myself that, because there's so many times where you're getting ready to play a show and you just kind of go, I don't feel like standing on a stage and have people gawk at me, and criticize me, or, judge what I do, or whatever. Like, I don't feel like that. I don't feel like doing that today. But I have to remind myself, I think it was in a Bill Callahan interview or something one time. He said that he has this mantra that he says to himself that's just like, something like, I asked to be here. And, it is tough when you don't feel like it, because a lot of people don't. I mean, you don't feel like going to work, but you can, shut your office door or whatever and have some time. But, it's when you're in front of people and you're having to pull off the music, and, if you're not feeling it, you still have to kind of approximate what you're doing to make sure that the show is not suffering because of that, and that there's a certain level of, whatever the word is, when you want to keep things to a certain standard. But then there's that looseness too of, we've never played this show before. We have to do it right now.
Mm-hmm.
And and it's like the mood of everybody else in the band or what's going on in the personal life. I mean, there's a lot of things that go into it. So, you want to approximate everything so that it does have that standard to it. But at the same time, sometimes when everybody's feeling it together, you kind of rise to a new level. And, some shows are better than others, and that's just how it is.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the big thing is to continue moving when you don't have those good shows, when you don't have those good nights, when your monitor mix isn't good or there's a weird, reflection of the vocal mix, off of the back wall that's messing with your monitor. Every room has its own set of circumstances, and but not to let yourself get, because I've definitely done shows where it's like, man, that was great. We did exactly what we wanted to do. And then the next night you kind of come in a little too cocky, and then you just don't feel right, and then it gets even worse when you're a little too cocky, about, oh man, we're badass, whatever. You still have to play every show, every night with that, whatever the circumstances are with that day in that room with the people. Like last night's show, it was kind of funny. There was this guy, and I don't know why people do this, but I've seen this more in like England than in the States, but there was a guy like standing right in the front, and he was just like, he just kind of had this sour grapes thing the whole show. And so many times last night I wanted to be like, hey man, can you just go to the back? If you're gonna.
I didn't notice that guy.
Yeah, I mean, you pick these people out,
Yeah.
very easy, because you want to look around and see, are people having fun? Do we need to play something fast? Do we need to play something slow? Kind of read the room. And this guy was just sitting the whole time. After every song, he didn't clap, and he just kind of had this sour look on his face. And he was with his girlfriend, I think, and it was almost like he was trying to be a cool guy,
Yeah.
like, yeah, these guys stink. This is not really, the music's not really good, And, so little things like that, you can get in your head and you're like, man, do we really suck? Is this guy, is he the truth in this moment?
Right.
But you can't judge yourself, in other words, based off of all these different circumstances. You have to be able to, keep it cool and do the best you can to perform the songs. But the hope is that you're doing that, but then something in the crowd starts to lift you, and you're all there together,
Mm-hmm.
but you don't always get that. You don't always get, even the shows that are like last night's show was well attended.
Mm-hmm.
People were energetic and stuff, but just because you have those things doesn't mean that the music feels like it's being lifted, through that. It's an unspoken kind of thing. And it can happen with 10 people in an audience, and and it can feel great, and it can feel like this is what we're out here doing. This is why we're out here doing this, to have these kind of moments with people. But yeah, there's a lot of little things that go into it, but that's what makes it exciting and fun, and kind of you have to show up every time and look around and realize that you haven't done this before. This is brand new, in so many ways. So.
Well, there's some transferable life lessons in what you just said. I mean, you had the guy up front who had the sour look on his face. I was like halfway back in the room, and there were two women next to me who clearly didn't know who you were, and they were having the time of their fucking lives. And everything, and for folks listening, so we were at Tuffy's Music Box in Sanford last night, which is a great room run by musicians and
Great people over there.
Great folks, right?
Yeah.
I mean, everybody there is wonderful. The crowd is always fantastic. People are really there to watch and take in music. It's a wonderful room to play. But you had that guy up front, and yet you had the ladies. You had me, who was very locked in, and you had the ladies next to me. The one lady goes, she was like, she kept laughing because you are a expressive performer, and there are moments, silly moments, and there are crazy moments, and she was loving it. And so she's really enjoying the music, and then she's laughing her ass off at everything you were saying in between. And her friend was like half making fun of her. She's like, everything he says is so cute though. It's like she was clearly having so much fun. And so there's this tendency to, that dude was right up front with the sour look on his face, and yet there were 3 times as many people, right, having a blast 5 feet back,
Mm-hmm.
and the rest of the room was having a good time too. I had a good vantage point on it. So there's so many transferable lessons there, right? To like make sure you're taking in the totality of the circumstances, not just as in a performance, but sort of like everywhere we are in life, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Because I have most definitely played shows where I see that guy with the sour grapes guy, and 100% of my mind is consumed,
Mm-hmm.
with his attitude.
Mm-hmm.
I remember playing a set in somewhere in England one time. It was just a solo set kind of thing, but yeah, it was a small place. I was with Erin Ray, and I was playing bass with her, and I was just opening a show for her. But there, I think about this guy sometimes because it does represent, I think if I hadn't seen this guy in England, I wouldn't have had the tools maybe to deal with like that guy last night and not let him get it into my head. But yeah, just the old, crossed his arms and just, oh, this is terrible, and didn't clap at anything. And, but life is like that too. And like sometimes you have this negative thing and you get locked on it and you can't figure out a way to get out of it,
Right.
But with repetition, it does help. But yeah, it's funny, the different kind of things you see when you look out into a crowd and you're like, oh, that couple, they've been arguing. These people just met and they both, are really into each other. This woman's exhausted. I bet she's got 4 kids. And, it's like, it's funny, all the different people that you see at a show, and you hope to communicate to all of them. But yeah, that except for the guy in the front who was too cool for school.
That's so interesting. Are you processing that in the moment? Each of those things
Yeah.
you just described in the moment?
That's the thing. It's kind of a trip about this whole thing is like all these things are going on at the same time.
Yeah.
And at the same time, I'm trying to play this electric guitar and not sound like a total idiot, and remember all my words. Like we were playing in Macon a couple nights ago, and I forget what song it was, but at some point I realized that I wasn't singing the lyrics. I was just like, and it was like I had to go, okay, Joe, it's like there's so many things going on that you focus on or whatever. And I realized that I was just one of these fast songs. I was just kind of like, blah, 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 and I had to go, wait, where am I? Where are the lyrics? Boom. Okay, here we are. And it's like slipped out of reality just for a second because there's so many different things to get distracted by,
Yeah.
especially when you haven't played in a while. And like these guys, like these isn't my normal band.
Mm-hmm.
I'm listening to what they're doing, because it's like, okay, this part's a little too slow. This part drags, a little bit. We need to make a mental note for tomorrow night or after the show. Hey, on this part, So there's so many of those things, especially as like the band leader. There's a lot of hats you wear, a lot of things going on, but you have to stay focused on the, the right things.
I think that's so, man, because like, I mean, that connection of music and I've been thinking about this a lot. I mean, it's kind of what the whole fucking show is based on, is just thinking about the import of art and how it connects with people. I don't know that I've really processed it the way you just described as like, because I'm not sure anybody's put it that way, that you are in fact taking in the lives of all those people in that moment. That's a lot to take in. It's a lot to sort of like process in the moment while you're also doing the thing. But I feel like, because that was a fantastic performance, dude, and I feel like maybe that informs your performance in a way that makes it something completely special. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I'm not sure everyone really looks at it that way.
I don't think they do.
Well, and not, I don't necessarily think it's a good thing, just 100%. But I do think that, you can't let the audience dictate too much about what you're doing, because, you really have to keep the reins in your hands, and it's you're in control of that particular space of time, and you're the one dictating everything. But I do think that when live music is at its best, there is an eye to eye contact. There's a connection between the audience and who's on stage. That kind of is what it's all about. It's that you're there to say, hey, this is what I think about life. This is sort of these songs are like tiny mission statements, and do you agree or do you disagree? And when people agree and they say, yeah, I feel that way too, that's 100%, what you're doing it for. But there's a lot of little things that can creep up and get in the way, of that happening. And it doesn't always happen. So, yeah, I mean, you have to have that sort of standard that isn't affected by the audience at all. But ideally, I like when you kind of open the gates a little bit wider and say, come on in. And they say, you come on in too. And you kind of have this back and forth. That's when it's really special, when those things happen. But you can't really manufacture it. And sometimes it surprises you. Sometimes you might be in the middle of a song and you feel something in the room connect a little bit more. And it's cool to pick up on those little nuances. I mean, I think if I just got on stage every night and said, I don't want to know what the crowd's, I don't want to open my eyes, I don't want to think about what they're feeling or anything like that. And I think a lot of it has to do with the music. I mean, there's a lot of different kinds of music that you wouldn't really want to look around and see the tired mom or whatever. But for some reason, with this music that we do with the Kernal thing, it's more, it's like we're all just hanging out. It's not like here's a poem and you guys, I want to sing it really quiet and y'all are going to be transfixed, in this moment. It's more like, hey, have a good time and sneak some lyrics in there, and maybe you'll pick up on that and enjoy that. But yeah, it's interesting. There's a lot of different ways to do it, and I think from the outside looking in, it does look simple. Like someone's on stage, there's an audience, and that's just all it is. But there's a lot going on there, and there are a lot of different ways to drive that car, which is what's fun about it. It's the theater is the same way. It's like anything can happen on these planks up here.
Right. Well, you talked about like the Kernal thing. You want people to have fun, and I think that the interesting thing about that is it is fun, but at the same time, I mean, like last night there were a couple songs you played, like, "Pistol in the Pillow" is a great example that examines anxiety from a fun perspective, but it's also some heavy stuff. Green Green Sky is a heavy song that's also super fun. Super Marijuana Walmart, which we talked about last time, but I did you play it last night, by the way? Okay, good, I didn't miss out. I wondered if you even play that live.
Yeah, we just had a release show with putting the record out a few weeks ago, and we did, but I had 2 keyboard players.
Okay,
and,
right.
So it's a lot more.
Yeah.
It's a lot more fun with more instruments.
Because I think all of those that I just mentioned, and I could probably do that for every song. Yeah, the Fight song, The Limit, I could do that for You Do You, for every song on the record, in that I'm having fun while I'm listening, but at the same time it's forcing me to examine some aspects of my own personality and my own life. And so I'm interested in that juxtaposition and how you balance those things, how you make something like this concept of like anxiety being sort of misdiagnosed or undiagnosed or just straight up ignored or dismissed, and make it into something that you can play live and people have a blast with.
Yeah. I think with all these songs, I do want them. I do want there to be, hey, there's a way out. There's hope kind of baked in.
Like a tornado that picks you up and takes
right,
you away.
Yeah. Well, it's even like the guy in Green Green Sky. The guy's name is Lolly. Like, what a silly name. Who this guy becomes this terrible person. But his name's Lolly. And it's funny because my brother, I have a twin brother, and my mom used to call him Lolly when we were little, because his name's Josh, and I think she's funny with nicknames and things, and she called him Lashy and then Lolly, and so it's kind of a funny thing we talk about now. Is like I'll call him Lolly, and but I like sneaking little things like personal things into songs like that, and but yeah, having that balancing that levity with just real life everyday stuff, with it, with the outcome being, there is hope. It's not just a murder ballad or something. So yeah, that kind of ends up being a goal for me when I'm writing these tunes. Is if a little kid wandered into the room who's 6 years old, and I want that little kid to start dancing around, you know.
Uh-huh.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, and I
Yeah.
think that's why, for example, those people standing next to me last night, even though they didn't know the songs, were having a great time. I'm not sure they were processing what the fuck you were saying, even.
Yeah, no, I think most people don't. If they haven't heard, they're just like, oh, it's fun, you know?
Yeah.
Which is fine. That's 100% fine for me, you know?
Yeah, because I mean, I've given it multiple thoughtful listens and taken copious notes on the songs, but we were having these sort of parallel experiences and still having a great time, me and these two women standing next to me that I'd never met either, and there's such a beauty to that.
Yeah. Lyrically, I mean, to me, that's more like, you know, it's like a woman who makes quilts or something like that. You know, it's a quilt. It's going to be a quilt every time, but there's little things that, you know, she might put into that's personal. That, you know, when other people see it, they're just like, oh, this is a quilt. You know, when they hear it, it's like, oh, it's 4 white guys playing country songs. You know, but there's little stuff in there that for me, that's more of the fun part for me. It's like my little thing that I put in the quilt that makes me happy, you know, because I enjoy the writing process and or the writing outcome, maybe not the process all the time, but you know, exploring and finding things, you know, lyrically that work together. It's kind of just like a fun hobby for me, you know. So yeah, and it's there if people are looking for it and they're interested in that same particular, you know, strain of things. But if not, then hopefully the music's fun and it's got a decent chorus, you know.
Yeah.
That's all you're really trying to get, you know.
You just said something I'm not sure we touched on last time, and we talked process last time, but I'm not sure that I heard you say maybe you don't enjoy the process as much all the time. Can you say more about that? Like, do you get frustrated, or what is
yeah.
that?
I mean, it's just honestly, it's incredibly difficult to write anything,
Right.
you know, because especially now, it's even when I first started trying to write, I felt like there was so little music, and or maybe I was aware that there was a lot of music, but you just weren't bombarded with the reality that there are, you know, you could spend a whole lifetime trying to dig into, you know, cool music, and you'd never find the end of that rope. I mean, it's just unending.
Feel overwhelming.
And now we're inundated with that reality, you know, with streaming and stuff, that it's just, what is it? There's like 60,000 songs uploaded a day, you know, to Spotify or whatever. It's like, wild. And there's already enough music in the world that you could never find it all, you know? So, yeah, I mean, so you're, as someone who's trying to write songs, you're becoming aware every day of so much music, and why would I even write anything? And of course, when you sit down to write something, you don't want to write something, or I don't, that someone else is doing, you know. I'm not going to write a Jason Isbell song better than Jason Isbell.
Right,
you know?
right,
So I'm not
right.
going to sit and try to write that kind of song. I'm going to try to write a kind of song that I don't hear, you know, that has my own particular stamp on it. And you know, I don't know that people think about that with writers a lot. I mean, that it's not just this person sits down and it just comes out, you know. There's a lot that goes into it, and you know, yeah. So all that to say, I guess it's really hard to write a song.
Yeah.
You know,
to write one song and then to write an album's worth, and to make it something different, and to make it something that you find compelling, that you think other people are going to find compelling.
Right. Yeah, it's not easy, and it, like anything good, it takes work, it takes time, and it's not always fun, and it's very frustrating when you can sort of see where you want to go, but you don't know how to get there. Yeah, so, and every song's kind of different, and it's like having a relationship with a person. It's like you make a person, you know, or something that you have a kind of a back and forth relationship to, and then at some point it becomes, you know, in some ways finished, and it's like a reference point for you. You know, it's like a person you have a conversation with. like Pistol on the Pillow. That's an idea that I have a relationship with now, and it's a way for me to reference something to sort of help myself, whenever I, get into a sticky situation in my own personal life. It's a way for me to say, yeah, this is what I think about this, and I do think this is true, that maybe community, a strong community can be better than medication, for certain things. So that idea that's something that you take with you. So, and then you perform that, and you hope that other people kind of pick up on it too. But if not, like I said, just to have a good time.
Yeah, man.
It's all sort of deducible by that.
There's so much good stuff in there. Micah Schnabel has been on this show a couple of times, and I think there's a common thread. What Micah does is very different from what you do, but there's a common thread in those two products, and that is that Micah said to me, I'm not going to try to do what Jason Isbell does because I can't do what Jason Isbell does. I'm going to do a different thing that's unique to me. And while Micah can write a hell of a folk song or a country song or a punk song, what he's doing now just sounds like nobody else. And other than maybe the band Listener, who really influences him, what you do, I feel like, is very similar in that way. It's like, certainly it is an homage to country music, and you could easily call it country music, but it is your thing, and you are doing a completely unique thing. You're not trying to be Jason Isbell. And that's really interesting to make those choices, because I think there's value in both, right? There's value in trying to rip off Jason Isbell, right? Even if you won't get there.
Actual value.
Yeah. But there's also value in going, hey, I'm not going to get there. He does that thing. He does it better than anybody. I got this other thing I can do. I'm going to try to do that better than anybody, or as well as I can, at least.
Yeah. Yeah, or it's just like discovering kind of who you are and what your strengths are, and yeah, I mean, yeah, there is value in hopping on a train and saying, well, it's funny because I was talking to Cotton, my lead guitar player, yesterday, about he did a show one time, and he was basically opening for a Jason Aldean impersonator, and I thought, man, he was like, and he looked just like him.
No.
I'm like, is there a market for that? Like
What?
Jason Aldean's still very much alive and doing things,
Yeah,
but,
unfortunately.
But, it's like, yeah, once somebody establishes...
Not unfortunately that he's alive. Sorry. I don't mean for him to be dead. I mean, I'd like him to stop doing things. Sorry.
Stop
Anybody listening, I'm not wishing death on Jason Aldean or anybody else.
Oh, he's coming for you, man. But yeah, it's funny. There is a market for duplicating something, and it's like people get comfortable hearing a certain style or whatever, and it got mass appeal. It's good to jump into that too, and but I think I just find that part of stuff a little boring for me personally. But that just means that like I'm doing something that's very niche, and the people that like it, but it doesn't have like a mass appeal, and it doesn't really kind of have the legs on it to go too far in that way. I don't think. I wish it would sometimes, because it would make things a little easier.
Right.
You wouldn't have a van that would break down twice in one day.
Yeah. Right. Well,
I'm very well aware of what I'm doing, and so no complaints, at all. But yeah.
I've never gotten my head, and I don't know that anybody has gotten my head around what takes off and what doesn't, when it comes to that stuff. Because like when I hear your records, I'm like, well, everybody should be hearing this, But then somebody else might hear and not get it. I don't know. It may not. A song about a super marijuana Walmart may not connect with everybody. I think it should, but it doesn't necessarily. And I think that's, I don't know, but I just never know what's gonna take off and what's not. But I find, okay, so what you just said is kind of a good transition to the conversation about the Kernal and about the suit and about the album art and about the bearing of the suit and sort of where you're headed. And I'm wondering now now you've been out on the road with this record a little bit, like where your head's at with the whole Kernal thing.
Yeah, that's a big question. And I'm not sure. I mean, it's one thing if it's like that. I think maybe it's a Middle Brother song that John McCauley did, where he says, "I'm all booked up next year." You know, he's like looking at his schedule, and he's like, "Oh, my whole year is planned out for me." He's like, "This is supposed to be great, but it's also kind of depressing." You know, so it's like I don't really know what to expect, and we're still just eking back into this, and it still feels like, you know, it very much feels like it's not normal, you know, yet. Post-pandemic stuff. I mean, we're still kind of in that phase, and putting a record out, and you know, I mean, I think it would be foolish to make too many plans. But I don't, honestly, I'm just taking it a day, a month at a time, kind of thing, you know, and just a run at a time. And so it's now we're talking about, well, do we want to do some touring in the summer, and what would that look like? Where would we go? Who would we want to tour with? That kind of stuff. You know, that's kind of where my head's at. It's more just because, you know, with it taking a few years to get the record out, it kind of feels good for the record to be out and to kind of help it kind of spread around a little bit with doing some touring and doing things like this. And that's really where my head's at. I'm not, you know, I've been thinking long term with the Kernal project since I started it. The whole thing, I've known how it was going to end for 10 years. I mean, that's kind of the way I designed the project, is to have this arc. You know, when I did my first record, I knew that I was going to have two other phases, you know, of this project, and with two other records and sort of, you know, the things around that. So I've been thinking long term about this thing since I started, and now, you know, having completed the third record, I've kind of in effect, you know, turned that switch off, the long term switch momentarily. It's, you know, it's like on a boat, and you're on a speedboat, and you just cut the engine off, and I'm just kind of going with the outcome at the moment, you know. So I don't know. I really, honestly don't know what to expect, and I'm not making any grand plans and stuff. I just honestly, I kind of just want to be able to keep doing this, and there isn't always. Sometimes it's really hard to keep doing this, you know.
Yeah.
Just practically as a person, you know, trying to live and stuff. So I want to keep doing it, but if it comes to the point where, you know, it's not getting enough traction, and I can't, you know, keep myself on the road, you know, financially and all these kind of things, and like financially support the band, then, you know, may have to stop, you know, for a while or whatever. So I'm kind of open to anything. I mean, I think if someone told me 5 years ago there's a chance that you might need to stop playing music, it would have really depressed me. But now I'm just a little more sober, I think, with it, and I've had a lot of fun and I've enjoyed the process. But if it goes away and I have to, you know, do something else because it doesn't have enough of a fan base and enough of a crowd town to town, then I'm fine with that too. So yeah, I'm not making any grand plans at the moment.
So what if you had, because what I hear in that is all the very understandable and natural constraints that life puts on us, right? Money and time and family and, you know, friendships and all those constraints that naturally exist in a creative life. When I think of you and I think of your creativity, it's like, it feels like the creative part is limitless. So if you didn't have those other constraints, do you have any sense of like what your next sort of 10-year phase would be if you didn't have to worry about all those things that you have to worry about?
That's a good question. And yeah, there's a huge appeal to that, you know. Yeah, I love the idea of waking up every day and just diving into whatever my imagination, whatever my imagination and I can come up with together. Whether that's like painting or, you know, trying to write or anything. I mean, I find it, I love being in the groove where I can just think about creative things all the time and kind of switch back and forth between, among different mediums, and it's a lot of fun. It's an enjoyable thing, but unfortunately, those things were a lot easier when I was 26 and I wasn't thinking about, more family things and some of those more practical things. But the older you get, the more those things are just, if you try to avoid them, it doesn't go very well.
Nope. Nope. Not an effective strategy.
So it's I almost feel like I'm holding out hope that I have this little pocket. I've got this little set of things I would like to do, and I hope that I can get there. But yeah, I mean, you have to take it a day at a time, and maybe I'll win the lottery and I can wake up and think about creative things all the time. But we'll see.
Yeah, I've been wrestling with some of that now, for good reasons. I'm fortunate in that, like, my whole financial situation changed dramatically in the last 2 years, to where I was like, how am I going to pay my bills, to like, I'm okay now. And I'm not rolling in cash, but I'm at a place now where I don't feel that lingering fear that I won't be able to pay my mortgage and I won't be able to,
That's the fear they want you to have.
Exactly, they do. And I don't have it right now, so fuck those motherfuckers. But I don't have it at the moment, and so what I'm thinking about right now is, like, for me creatively, what I can, like, how I can leverage that. And I think it does get harder as you get older. I'm not an old man, but I am 41. And so the responsibilities that start to come into your life, how you're able to balance those things and really wrestling with those things. So it's an interesting conversation that I have no answers to right now, but I am.
You're answering it every day when you wake up.
Right. I think that's it. That, like you just said, take it a day at a time. I really think that's true.
Yeah. Yeah. You have to think of it that way. Yeah.
Because I don't know that, like, there isn't a good way to, because everybody's creative journey is so different. So I learn these little lessons every single time I have a conversation like this with somebody whose work I admire, but I don't necessarily, I can't just go, I'm going to follow Joe's path.
Right.
That's not going to work. I can't follow Colonel Bruce Hampton's path. That's definitely not going to work either. But I'm learning these little nuggets from each person and just kind of trying to give myself grace to go, it really has to remain about me growing as a creative person, and as a human, just as a person in general, and not try to think I'm going to take this and I'm going to make it this for myself. I'm going to take this from this person and I'm going to make it for myself, because it doesn't work that way. And I think sometimes there's a tendency that I have, at least, to go like, well, I see that guy doing it. I'm good too. I can write the thing that guy wrote. I want to write that thing. And then everybody goes, hey, good thing. Good job writing that thing. But it doesn't really work that way. And so I like that very simple advice of, like, just taking it a day at a time.
Well, and I think it's even true for your own self, that just because you've done this set of things for 5 years, you still have to wake up the next day and and do the thing yourself. You can't just parody yourself, or you can, I guess. I mean, but it's, I mean, I think life is frustrating in some ways, in that way that you really do, or like I have a tendency sometimes to just be like, man, I wish I could just push a button and everything just kind of is just like this, but it just doesn't work that way,
Yeah.
It's, you have to show up every day.
You do have to show up every day. Yeah, I somebody was posting, well, specifically Lydia Lovelace posted about her morning pages the other day, and I had skipped my morning pages that morning, and I thought to myself, like, that was a good reminder. I didn't beat myself up about it, but it was a good reminder that, like, I just didn't show up that day, and that's okay.
Yeah.
Sometimes you're not going to show up. But the next day I did it, and I made sure I showed up, and with predictable results, right? I had a pretty creative day, and I felt like I was able to make some headway on some projects.
Yeah.
But not beating yourself up about it, but also holding yourself accountable to show up and do the work each day.
Yeah. Yeah, not beating yourself up takes practice too.
Man, I'm not good at it yet.
Yeah. Well, you'll get good at it, and then they'll be putting you in a casket. That's just
right.
kind of how it works. Oh, you finally got it.
He did.
Yeah. Welcome to the memorial service.
He finally got it. That's what I want on my headstone.
Well, my mom has this. She's German Irish, and her grandparents on her mother's side, she grew up around them, and they didn't even speak English. They just spoke German, and so she kind of has this little bank of cool German phrases and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And one of them, it translates to "too old, too soon, too old, too smart," and I think about that one a lot. Too old, too soon, too old, too soon, too late, too smart. Yeah. It's
That's funny.
That's just kind of how it is.
Now I'm gonna beat myself up because after you asked me for food recommendations, I thought I should have sent them to Hollerbach, which is a German restaurant here that's kind of well known. So now I feel like
I'm the worst with food. I'm always just like, let's just go and put something in our stomach and get on the road. And the talks of like, well, we could do this, or this place is 3.5 stars. I just want to like blow up. My wife gets frustrated when we she always wants to go to like the spot, like you're supposed to do when you go visit a town. You're supposed to go to the places you're supposed to go to and experience. But I'm always like, let's just go to Waffle House and be done with it.
Well, I wonder if if you'd miss out on like wrong turn to Tupelo type moments if you were going to the 4-star restaurant instead of ending up at the Waffle House.
Maybe, yeah, because it's like I kind of have a utility mindset when it comes to food. I'm like, it'll take 7 minutes, just get a can of tuna, put it in your stomach, and then go about your day.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can do all this other stuff. But
I love that line. I love how in Pistol in the Pillow they're drinking, eating tuna fish and drinking wine.
Oh yeah, it's good. I mean, that's good solid protein and little wine.
I don't think I've ever done that, but it just made me go like, oh shit, man, that makes too much sense. Like a nice little easy Sauvignon Blanc with some tuna fish.
Yeah. There you go.
Some canned tuna.
Canned tuna, man.
On some wheat bread.
Yeah.
That sounds really good, man.
You can do it.
Yeah.
You can do it.
Do
it today.
I don't eat fish anymore, but if I did, I'd do it.
Yeah.
You got to get to Jacksonville to rock the people. You're playing Jackrabbits tonight. One of my favorite rooms in the world, man.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Cool.
And
never been there.
Oh man, I love that little club. It's I've seen so many great shows. I saw Sturgill there right before he became Sturgill, like right before he blew up. American Aquarium there many times.
Okay, cool.
I think it was really originally kind of more of a punk rock club. Tiny little room, great crowds.
Great. You're
gonna dig it. I think you're gonna have a great time.
I like the sound of a small room and a tight crowd. That's kind of ideal.
It's great. Who's opening?
Cheyenne Metters, the guy playing bass with me, is opening. I actually think there's some other people, but I don't know.
Because I wonder if...
I think there's a guy, actually, I think tonight there's a guy named Robbie Dammit is his name. And I thought, I just cracked up. I was like, wow, what is that name? Robbie Dammit.
That's a Duval name is what that is. That's a Jacksonville name. You're going to have so much fun, man. Your music's going to fit right in there.
I wonder what his middle name is,
yeah. Robbie Dammit's middle name. Robbie Dammit.
Yeah, I look forward to meeting him. So
I don't know him. There's a few great ones up there, and it's just a wonderful town. I lived there for off and on for a decade, and
really?
I sing its praises all the time. It's just a complicated, wonderful, beautiful, messy place, and so if you need recommendations of 3-star restaurants or whatever when y'all get there, or places to have a drink.
The best Waffle House.
Yeah, just hit me up because I know my way around. But before I let you go, we always end on what you're getting down on, the art that is inspiring you at the moment.
Oh, yeah. I'm always bad at these questions, too. Because I remember last time I was like, oh, man, I wish I would have prepared.
I know. I like catching people off guard, though.
I've been reading this book called 1491 about like the Americas before Columbus, and sort of debunking a lot of myths about native cultures and things like that.
I want to read that.
It's been really fascinating. It's a bit dense, but it's great. So that's something I've been taking in. I don't know. Let's just look at my...
I realized how ignorant I was about indigenous cultures and Native American cultures when I had David Huckfeld on the show. And that's one of his big causes is like making people aware of the history of the treatment of indigenous Americans and really uplifting their voices. Like he plays a lot of music with Native American artists and has them on bills with him and plays benefits and that kind of thing. And it just really woke me up to like, I just don't pay enough fucking attention to this, you know. Like, of course, I know the history book version of stuff,
right?
But I need to read books like that.
Well, this book kind of says, you know, this is what they said in school, but you know, here's the top archaeologist in the world talking about, you know,
right,
you know, and the diversity in, you know, how many different types, or not types, but how many different cultures. You know, we think, oh, they were just all one people, you know, bands of, you know, people roaming around, but so much diversity even in the languages. I mean, there were, you know, like over 1,000 different languages, and you know, compared to like Europe, there's only a handful of places where language came from.
Right.
But in the Americas, there were like just dozens, you know, of different, like totally different languages, you know. So it's interesting because it causes you to think a lot about like what, you know, the creativity and the you know, sort of the genius of human beings.
Yeah.
You know, no matter where they come from, but just sort of the innate, interesting aspects of, you know, what a human being is and stuff. So, yeah, it's great. And I was just going to look at my Spotify playlist here. Cool. Let's see. Dave Dudley, Pavement.
Right on.
That band, A Hawk and a Hacksaw. I've been listening to them a bunch for some reason.
I don't know.
John Prine. You know, Future. A little hip hop in there.
Right on.
Doc Watson, you know.
Of course. As you would expect.
Yeah, no Neil Young on here. I don't know. I haven't seen Neil Young.
What do you have against Neil Young, Joe? What's the problem?
He's just not on my Spotify for some reason.
That's weird.
I don't get it.
I don't know. I'll have to look that up.
I thought he was kind of big enough to be on Spotify.
I would expect it. But you don't.
Shows what I know.
Yeah, the future. Who knows?
Yeah, man.
Oh, dude, this has been such a pleasure as always. It's so good to get to see you play those songs live. I'm so glad that I heard all new stuff last night because I've been really loving the record, listening to The Blood, and I'm grateful for your time. I'm grateful that you were able to get here and play the songs for the people here, and that you went out of your way to come to this parking lot in Sanford and
hey, it's my pleasure,
spend
man.
an hour with me.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, man.
The Kernel, y'all. Thank you so much, Joe. Thank all of you for listening. This was a pleasure. TheKernelmusic.com for all things The Kernel. That's Kernal. Get a physical copy of Listen to the Blood. The song you are hearing in this episode is the wonderful Super Marijuana Walmart from that very same record, Listen to the Blood. MarinadePodcast.com for all things The Marinade, including written pieces, photography, our online store, and more. And if you really like what we're doing, please consider joining our Patreon community, where for just a few bucks a month, you can gain access to Patreon exclusive content like our show Jason's Journey, where I talk about the moments that shape my creative life and provide a window into the process of making the Marinade. The last few Jason's Journeys have been a lot of fun and extra special. Part 2 of episode 102 with Van Plating is over there. Van and I talked about our experiences at Americana Fest 2021 and just kept getting down about creativity and life. We just released a conversation with Jordan Foley and Thomas Wynn, which was recorded at Tuffy's Music Box ahead of Jordan's set with his band The Wheelhouse in support of the Kernel the day before I recorded this episode. That one's available for free, even if you don't feel like signing up for the Patreon. Patreon.com/Marinade Podcast if you're interested in any of that. If you want to support the show financially, but you don't want to commit to a monthly subscription, you can Venmo or PayPal us at The Marinade. All the money goes right back into the making of the show, and right now that means saving up to cover festivals with the great Jen Ross of Jen Ross Photography. We've got a lot of cool stuff lined up, and we've had a lot of cool experiences already in this year. We got to cover Gasparilla Music Festival together. Check out that coverage on marinadepodcast.com. We also got to cover Orange Blossom Review, also available on marinadepodcast.com. There's plenty of good stuff that you can check out, and we really appreciate the support. All right, y'all, it's time for my Review Under 2, the segment of the show where I review some work of art that has me fired up and try to make my point in under 2 minutes. The subject of this episode's review is the wonderful slice of nostalgia by the well-read comedy team called Bubba Shot the Podcast. Bubba Shot the Podcast is at first glance a pretty niche show. A 1990s country podcast produced by liberal redneck comedians. There are like 10 people in that target audience, right? Ignoring the ignorance of assuming there are so few liberal folks in the South or so few fans of 90s country music, the appeal of an ostensibly narrow idea enjoys charm for a huge swath of society. If you were conscious of the world between 1990 and 1999, you knew Shania Twain, you knew George Strait, you knew Garth Brooks, and if you were living in a small town anywhere in the U.S., you knew Mark Chestnut's Bubba Shot the Jukebox, you knew Whose Bed Have Your Boots Been Under. You did not have to be, quote, country in the small southern town sense to feel the Nashville Machine's influence on popular culture. The sounds coming from Music City at that time punctured borders. Is it good? Does it hold up? Who were the people making these tunes? Who are the people continuing to make these tunes? These are the questions facing the well-read team as they take a trip down memory lane in their virtual Chevy S10 with the bench seat and the dual exhaust. The guys examine the lyrics, songwriting, and overall context of each tune to resurrect a slice of Americana. The genius of this show relies on the faulty memories of its core hosts, the personal touches they place on each song, and the show-stopping foil of comedian Tushar Singh. Tushar, an Indian American who grew up in Alabama yet somehow has never heard most of the songs on Bubba Shot the Podcast, lends a get-your-ass-sober slap in the face of the tendency to accept the music of your upbringing as unassailable. Like many things the well-read team does, Bubba Shot the Podcast focuses on a specific area of popular culture and makes its relevance feel universal. The show should have its own The Morning After Bubba Shot His Shot show, and After the Thrones-like recap, for which I volunteer as host. All right, y'all, that's my Review Under 2 for Bubba Shot the Podcast. You know I love the well-read guys. We've had 2/3 of them on the show, and I'd love to have Drew one of these days. I really would hope that we can catch up with them the next time the guys come through Orlando, or if I'm ever in their town. I'm just so grateful for the support that they've shown the show. We've had Trey Crowder was one of the first guests on the Marinade. Corey Ryan Forrester agreed to come on last year, and we had a blast. Just love those guys and the work they do, because I think it's not only entertaining and funny, but incredibly important work that they do. And I try to tell those guys that every chance I get. Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you to the Kernal for your time and your energy and your incredible music. Until next time, go out and create something. Cheers, y'all.